Kicking us off at number 5, we have SCP-860. Now some doors are just meant to remain shut. Nowhere is this more apparent than within the pocket dimension SCP-860 brings into existence. The SCP itself is a dark blue key that looks like any other key. At random, a series of numbers will appear on it, representing coordinates for somewhere in the world. So far, the coordinates have marked out locations in Germany, England, and at a Foundation site. The key will fit into any door lock in the area of the given coordinates. When the key is inserted and turned to open the door, the threshold will lead to a different location. A small forest clearing with a footpath will be revealed with blue mist hanging in the air. As soon as someone enters the door, it will automatically close and lock behind them, leaving them alone in the forest. No turning back. If the subject follows the footpath, they will be led to another similar door, which will lead to the usual location of the original door. Through many explorations of this area, some strange occurrences have been discovered. Weird, distorted howls have been reported by subject, as well as the sensation that they're being followed. The first couple subjects made it through alright, although the second reported being beckoned by something. The subject disappeared off the path to follow it, and the key remained stuck in the door for 7 months. Nothing was going to remove it. At the end of this time, the subject returned, noticeably aged and with a calmer demeanor than before. Subject 3 attempted to destroy the door, which apparently was a very bad call, because then a large paw appeared on the camera feed and no one's heard from them since. In the most recent exploration following that one, the mist actually appeared red instead of blue, and the path changed from dirt to cobblestones and also became forked. The man was hunted by whatever had been stalking the pines up till this point, and before audio cut out, a strange noise was heard. If you take the clip and play it backwards, you hear, "I see you." What the motives of the creature are, I cannot claim to know. But what I do know is that it's big, strong, creepy, has yellow eyes, and is able to kill humans. If it escapes the anomalous doors, it can and likely will wreak havoc. Coming in at number 4, we have SCP-3312. This memetic agent exists under the false identity of a fan website. It sneaks its way into people's lives and makes them compulsively consume products, media, and content related to various fan bases. The most notable fan base related to 3312 involves furries, a tale as old as the internet. However, the anomalous effects will only take hold of those with no prior involvement in the furry community. So upon being exposed to the memetic agent, folks will display a heightened interest in anthropomorphic characters in mainstream media. Sonic the Hedgehog, anybody? This will intensify over time through 6 marked stages. Soon they'll initiate participation in the furry community, including the creation of a persona and joining in on the roleplay. After this, affected individuals will seek out internet users who share negative views on the community and also expose them to 3312, bringing them into that community. At this point, the spread increases exponentially and anyone involved will become borderline obsessive. This could look like many things, including running several role-playing accounts, the purchase of animal costumes, consistent attempts to contact a prominent member of the community called Ollie Fox, and the creation of a political party concerning the desires of furries. After this, the individuals will assume the role of a prepubescent child and will cease to be able to attend their own needs. Their living conditions rapidly become unfit for any human, and they abandon any people outside of their online community. Then they'll undergo the delusion that they are indeed an anthropomorphic character and perpetuate this by any means necessary. This results in rejection by the non-anomalous community, following events like attempted intercourse with animals, heat-related deaths associated with animal costumes, deaths from great heights among those with winged animal characters, and firearm attacks. The final stage of this anomalous transformation involves total loss of higher cognitive functions. The individuals will regress to instinctual behaviors and their prior personality will be destroyed. They still possess human speech, but it'll be characterized by childlike pronunciations and heightened pitch. The final stage also involves heightened aggression towards all people, and the 3312 sufferers will kill indiscriminately, all while saying things like, "Hello, Mr. Police Officer." My goodness. Coming in at number 3, we have SCP-2718. Now this one's interesting because some Foundation personnel want it buried, while others think the world has a right to know about it. We'll see if it ever makes it to the public at large. 2718 is apparently a cognito hazard, but if you look a little closer, you'll notice that it's actually just insanely hard to find in the Foundation database. It's consistently being pushed deeper and deeper and deeper, with additional layers of security added. The fact that it's on Dameron clearance is stated like 5 times in the article. Plus the classification and number keep changing, so somebody wants to make sure this stays hidden. So what is 2718 really? Are you sure you want to know? Okay. Well, it's the fact that your mind and consciousness remain in your corpse after you die. This means that you feel your own body decaying, breaking down, being consumed, etc. And the pain doesn't stop when your body ceases to be either. Nope. Everyone will just be in intense agony forever and ever and ever. No mouth, no screaming, just immeasurable pain, even after the worms are done with you. This was all discovered when the council resurrected 0511, who then reported on what the afterlife was like. Pretty terrible by the sounds of it. Everyone is afraid of this discovery and its implications. For those reasons, the 05 council has decided to try to stop human death forever. So far, they haven't been too successful. Soon after the initial discovery, somebody clued into the fact that everyone is anomalously scared of 2718, and it should probably be erased from memory altogether. But before it could be totally wiped, 0511 decided that people had a right to know and ensured that if somebody tried to delete or edit the entry, large portions of the database would become corrupted. The council still went through with their plans though, killed 05, and erased 2718 from everyone's minds. Now it's chilling in the deep dark depths, trying its best not to be discovered. But now you know! Who's excited for an eternity of formless suffering? Clawing its way in at number 2, we have SCP-2571. We're not really sure if this is a real place or not, but ideally it will be prevented from spreading any further than it already has. This is quite difficult though, as it's just a dream, affecting people with seemingly no pattern. Cragglewood Park consistently appears in the dreams of 0.05% of the world's population. It's mostly common among adults who are raised as only children, but this is only one trend that's been identified. The dreams are largely upsetting to those who experience them, as they associate them with their own memories, even though there's no evidence of them ever being to the seemingly fictional theme park. Amnestics do purge these memories at first, but they always seem to resurface once treatment wraps up. Wherever these memories are coming from, they want to remain in the minds of people no matter what. Recurring themes include being between the ages of 4 and 12 while visiting, there being numerous anthropomorphic trees and plants present, no adults around, calliope music, and other unknown children being around. And there's only one ride, and that ride is a carousel. While there were always other kids on the carousel, the subjects interviewed never rode. You'd think that a theme park would involve all smiles and laughter, right? Well, the kids in the memories do smile and laugh, but only to keep from crying. Subjects have claimed to want to keep the trees happy, to ensure that they didn't know they were scared. But this is all a dream, right? What's the big deal? Well, actually, one subject in particular found an old cassette tape labeled Cragglewood in their childhood home. It documents the experience of 2 children making their way through the park. In the end, one child has to go on the carousel, and one does not. This knowledge is very upsetting to the 2 children, and after some teary-eyed goodbyes, they part ways. Screen grabs from the tape were uploaded to the wiki, and let's just say I can understand why the kids were so upset. These smiling tree mascots are not as friendly as one might imagine. And it seems that being raised as a single child doesn't always mean you never had a sibling. Just don't follow the organ music, alright? And lastly at number 1 we have SCP-2480. These Sarkics are one of the most prolific and dangerous groups of interest in the SCP universe, and this town is no exception. Right now it's presumed neutralized, which is a freaky little classification. It went from safe to Keter to we really don't know where this is. Oh geez. 2480 is a dimensional anomaly in Massachusetts centered around a manor owned by someone in the cult known as Additum's Wake. Additum is a city ruled over by the Grand Karcist Ion. It seems that the Wake is trying to kill Ion, potentially to take control of some of these Sarkic sects. Whatever ritual that was performed here went terribly wrong though, leading to some deaths in the family. Self-inflicted gunshot wounds, implosion, fatal physical reconfiguration, you know, all the normal stuff. Researchers had noticed all sorts of weirdness in the town, like way too many children in each house and suspicious deaths, but didn't know the truth of it until they started taking exploratory DMT. This drug allowed people to see beyond the veneer into the strange warped reality. The town was full of invisible hooded figures with buildings made of flesh. The messages "he is dreaming war" and "Additum will rise" are found, which seems to me like a doomsday waiting to happen. And of course, what is a creepy Lovecraftian town without some monsters? 2480 is home to massive humanoids, 4 meters tall, covered in pale, flabby flesh, walking around with their massive toothy mouths and 3-fingered hands covered in viscera. Do not approach them, okay? It's been discovered that the flesh around town is mostly human. and that this reality is actually bleeding into ours. The Foundation and the Global Occult Coalition have teamed up to manage this anomaly, which is a sure sign of something crazy going on, because there's no explanation for these two organizations working together. None. So buckle up and maybe leave New England to the New Englanders. We're not really sure what's gonna happen. Presumed neutralized. Coming in at number 5, we have SCP-993. It's Bobble the Clown, everybody! Be honest, if you walked in and saw a child watching something that looked like this, would you think twice about it? Even when he's menacing townspeople with his knife, it looks like good, clean fun. And that's what makes Bobble so insidious. He's out here teaching children some terrible, forbidden knowledge, all while maintaining the appearance of an innocent mascot. And even if you were to see red flags while Bobble was on TV, there wouldn't be any way for you to detect it, unless you're under 10, which I genuinely hope none of our viewers are based on some of the stuff we discuss here. Bobble is only viewable by kids 9 and under. Anyone else with eyes on the screen will black out for the duration of the program. And not the fun, headache-inducing kind of blackout either. I'm talking about the scary, what just happened kind. Nobody at the Foundation has been able to directly view an episode of Bobble the Clown, and as such, has interviewed a variety of children about the program. The results are worrying. Kids will describe the show teaching them how to do violent and morally reprehensible things. In the episode titled Bobble's Kitchen Surprise, the animated clown teaches kids to kidnap people, then skin, gut, and cook them. In another episode called Bobble's Sneaky Saturday, he's explaining to the kids how to remain unseen in crowded places before he follows a woman to her home and kills her with a butcher's knife. He even discusses how to cause containment breaches and murder researchers at the Foundation. Not the wholesome educational entertainment that most parents want their children consuming, but it's still like a little bit better than Elsa and Spider-Man videos and mystery unboxings, I guess. Coming in at number 4, we have SCP-990. The future is scary. Keep that in mind as I describe this dream prophet. Foundation members are the only people who seem to be aware of 990's existence. Nobody else in the world has reported dreams involving this future-sighted fellow. He's a human male dressed in a Cold War era suit who only appears in dreams. Never sighted in real life, he shows up with prophetic visions of the soon-to-be. When he appears in a dream, he'll bring news of upcoming end-of-world scenarios that the Foundation can stop. The first recorded instance of this happening involved an agent who slept for 40 hours straight, only to awaken in a highly agitated state, rambling about the end of the world. He had foreseen a series of events leading to several tactical nukes being launched, resulting in the extermination of 98% of the human race and a total collapse of human society. By relaying this info to a mobile task force, they were able to eliminate the threat that was going to begin the chain reaction. Unfortunately, this agent died of shock-like symptoms following this outburst. 990 doesn't just predict doomsday either. He's also capable of foreseeing the deaths of doctors and researchers, and even clued the Foundation into a highly dangerous SCP that they had yet to contain. 990 only appears when he wants to appear though, and nobody has been successful in contacting him outside of a random dream. Where is he getting this info? Why does he feel compelled to let the Foundation know? Is there something sinister going on that we don't know about? Only time will tell. Or maybe, just maybe, 990 himself will. Coming in at number 3, SCP-1504. For all of the complaining that this entity does, I would love to have the anomalous abilities that he possesses. First, he's unkillable. Like, nothing anyone can do will kill this man. Even self-inflicted gunshot wounds to the head won't cause any lasting damage. Secondly, he's always going to be reported as unremarkable. He doesn't stand out in a crowd, nobody pays any particular attention to him. After putting myself in front of millions of people on the internet, that sounds like a relaxing time. The final odd skill he has is the most interesting. Anything that 1504 does will be perceived by surrounding individuals as being totally normal under the circumstances. He can attack people and they will believe that circumstance or their own doing has hurt them. He can say and do whatever he pleases and people will react as if he was just sitting there normally. Once he punched a Foundation doctor in the nose, only to have the doctor excuse themselves for having an unexpected nosebleed. Imagine the freedom. You could walk around taking whatever you wanted from stores, strolling through restricted areas, burping, farting, scratching yourself in public. A dream come true, to be honest. Of course, our pal doesn't really want to chill and be cool. No, instead he wants to cause containment breaches and nuclear device detonations. Great work, dude. He hates his life as nobody really hears what he's saying, which has led him down a very sad and violent path. The scariest thing about him is that you could be interacting with him at any time and he could be messing you up big time. You'd have no idea. He could be causing all these awful things going on around you. He could even kill your family right in front of your eyes and you wouldn't know it was him. Coming in at number 2, SCP-1838. Red Bear Bob's food truck food is the only food I want to eat. This delicious SCP is a food truck that appears near pro football games around 18 to 36 hours before kickoff. It's a pretty standard looking food truck, usually run by 2 instances that we'll call 1838-1 from now on. These folks are always changing with no discernible pattern when it comes to age, ethnicity, gender, etc. Forget asking them about themselves though, they're very secretive. Bob's food truck tends to sling standard fare like burgers, fries, hot dogs, chicken, and pop. This food, known as 1838-2, is anomalously delicious. So much so that anyone who eats it will turn down any and all other food. They'll also express a deep desire to continue eating Bob's burgers. Give me that cauliflower's cumin from inside the house burger with cauliflower and cumin. Foundation agents do their best to prevent this food being served, as people who eat it will likely starve afterwards. This has led to confrontations known as Lissa events. Unprovoked violence against 1838-1 instances will cause one of these events as well, in which a seemingly unlimited number of food truck employees will exit the truck, wielding tire irons, crowbars, baseball bats, fire axes, and more. This will only stop when the responsible party is justly terminated. Gotta love food truck gang violence. If you sneak in through the door these folks are coming through, you'll find yourself in an elevator. That elevator leads to a huge room full of suspended walkways, and in this room, you can meet Bob. Bob is a very perfect person. He makes everyone want to be Bob. There have also been sightings of ads for a Red Bear Bob's General Department store, which sounds like an anomalous Trader Joe's. Equal parts of me want that and don't want it. And lastly, at number 1, we've got SCP-2901. If you're familiar with the SCP-1000 Bigfoot story, this will be of similar interest. A well-known cryptid cover story for something much more sinister and potentially unstoppable. Most people believe that 2901 is a species of nocturnal carnivorous scavengers that look like big moths. This is technically a true description. They can move through space-time freely, meaning levitation, flight, and teleportation are all on the table. Despite this, they are still susceptible to conventional weapons. Our light-following friends are also able to emit acoustic cancellation fields around them, probably meant to aid in stealth. Agents have been told to stand their ground if confronted by one, as running away will only provoke them to chase you. Making threat displays is encouraged, and if you do need to fight, make sure you're not making physical contact. Containment is basically impossible given their space-time abilities, so the Foundation has settled on quelling civilian suspicion. They've planted stories all across all sorts of media, from doctored photos to semi-realistic art to falsified eyewitness testimonies, even to documentaries hunting these beasts. You've probably seen some of this stuff before because it all sounds very similar to the West Virginia Mothman. Of course, this isn't the whole story. These cover stories and Mothman tales are all meant to control information, making it to the public. You see, for 2901 to maintain stable physical mass, approximately 75% of the human population within 500 kilometers needs to be congruent on a singular concept of what it is and does. If this wasn't the case, they could essentially run around doing anything. At one point, they were highly unstable, capable of producing localized CK-class scenarios at random. If we keep them as Mothman and keep the legend alive, they become much more manageable and docile. So, in the spirit of keeping the world the way it is, long live Mothman! Kicking us off at number 5, we have SCP-2241. A superhero in the making, or maybe a supervillain. It's always the risk you run when gaslighting a child with reality-bending capabilities. 2241 is a 7-year-old boy, originally with minor telekinetic ability and latent reality-bending abilities. The Foundation took him in and has maintained custody for his protection. Right, well, that's the cover story. Really what they're doing is testing and developing his abilities to see if they can create more superheroes like him. At first, he could slightly move small objects across the room, and he might accidentally change something into another thing every once in a while. But through hard work, determination, and a whole lot of insidious lying on the Foundation's part, he's really grown. By convincing him they're a sort of Avengers-type organization, the Foundation has got the young lad destroying drones, dispatching D-Class disguised as bad guys, and tossing mortars at the speed of sound. Not exactly the kind of stuff you want an emotionally unstable 7-year-old doing. He's been put through many tests, most of which are scenarios meant to upset him and place him in danger. Multiple times the ethics committee has put a stop to this testing, because he's a young dangerous child, but O5 has rescinded this every time, claiming the research is too valuable to let slide. Currently, he has a monitoring device implanted in him, which to me reads like kill switch if things get spooky. They've claimed that his loyalty is reason enough to consider the risk of containment breach low, but that smacks of stupidity and hubris to me. This whole thing just seems like Brightburn waiting to happen. If this kid throws a temper tantrum and flies off to the nearest town, I highly doubt there'll be much of a town left afterwards. Coming in at number 4, SCP-2200. Cursed Sword! Bad Cursed Sword! 2200 is a collective designation for a few interrelated things. First, there's a sword. An ancient sword. An ancient sword that defies aging by killing people and sending them to its silver paradise. It finds a host, attaches itself to them, and refuses to be let go. If it is indeed removed from the host's grasp, the host will die. When the host dies, the sword will anomalously relocate to the hand of another individual and bond with them. Doesn't seem to be a limit to the distance it will travel, and the sword seems to selectively bond with folks. If you're between the ages of 15 and 45, physically active, have a strong fear of death, and tend to be psychologically and emotionally unstable, you are a top-notch candidate. Folks who come across the sword generally act pretty irresponsibly based on these traits. One subject went around killing homeless people with it and considered it a benevolent act. He explained that they were probably close to death anyways, and this was a perfect way to ensure that they avoided hell. Another subject killed her own family in order to make sure they lived forever. If you're killed by the sword, a likeness of you will appear within a designated area of about 50 kilometers squared. This likeness will be made of silver-based alloy, fully inorganic, but animate and capable of vocalization. It will even share memories and personality traits with the victim it resembles. No more aging, no more injuries, no need to eat, sleep, or drink. Honestly, it just sounds like limbo. Just chill here forever and ever and ever, and you can't leave. Instances can choose to exit the area actually, but if they do, they cease to be animate, and nobody's really sure what happens to them after that. Some of these silvery, statuesque people see it as an opportunity to make your peace before dying for real. Others see it as a sort of purgatory. But really, it's a holding cell for the sword's elixir of life. Coming in at number 3, SCP-662. Honestly, this is only as dangerous as the person holding it, but considering people, it's pretty dangerous. It's a silver bell with no ringer. If shaken as if to ring it, a faint chime will be heard and a well-dressed British butler named Mr. Deeds will show up. He'll address the ringer by name and title and ask what they desire. Most reasonable requests given to Mr. Deeds will be satisfied. However, there are limits to what he can do. He can't produce super complex items like luxury cars, huge homes, or aircraft, but if he's allowed to leave line of sight, he can produce smaller, less complicated items like sandwiches, iced tea, caviar, and even bricks of gold. The jolly good chap will also perform menial tasks with high degree of efficiency, like washing cars, making food, or cleaning in general. If he considers anything impossible, he will politely let the ringer know and even suggest alternatives. How cordial. Durable too. If you injure or kill Mr. Deeds, which is about as difficult as killing or injuring a short posh butler, he'll reappear, uninjured and ready to go upon the next ringing. Now this all seems well and good, right? Well, it doesn't seem like Mr. Deeds has any qualms with murder. If someone were to ring the bell and request swift death upon their enemies, the butler would in all likelihood oblige. Some kills, like deeply entrenched military leaders, are too difficult, but most public figures and citizens are fair game. Plus, I bet he'd be able to go behind the scenes and cause plenty of mayhem. Mr. Deeds, can you acquire the nuclear codes? Hey Mr. Deeds, deliver a letter declaring war. Mr. Deeds, leak those photos. You know the ones. Good help is hard to find and super dangerous. Coming in at number 2, we have SCP-1678. Victorian era London is freaky, right? Jack the Ripper, werewolves, unexplainable diseases tearing through town. Oh, maybe I'm just thinking of Bloodborne. Regardless, a dimly lit, anomaly-filled London doesn't seem like the place you'd want to be, right? If that's the case, you're gonna want to avoid un-London. Exactly 1 kilometer below the real London is a mirror image city resembling the population center during the Victorian era. gas lighting, cobblestones, old architecture, etc. Researchers believe that it was constructed instantaneously by unknown means, with the Houses of Parliament as the epicenter. The further you get from these, the stranger the city becomes. Houses begin being made of copper pipes, doors and windows disappears, street lights are nothing more than poles with floating orbs at the top. A recorded message plays when one enters the city, basically confirming that it's meant to be a refuge for survivors of an XK class end of world event. The buildings seem to be outfitted for dense inhabitation, and the food supply is appropriate for a fallout shelter. The city itself is spooky but not exactly dangerous. These strange entities roaming the streets are another story though. So far, 2 types of humanoid anomalies have been discovered, with bird-like surveillance drones flitting about for good measure. The first is known as a wretch. Imagine a witch from Left 4 Dead without the insta-kill abilities. They lay about in rags, weeping and begging for food. If you provide them with some of the local nutrient paste, they'll literally disintegrate into ash. The other humanoid is more dangerous. It's known as a bobby. Victorian-era policemen assembled from dismembered human parts and industrial hinges. They're hostile to anyone they come across, attacking on sight with improvised weapons. Highly resistant to damage, these coppers can only be dispatched using high-caliber rounds and explosive weapons. I don't know exactly what's going on down there, but I would like it to stay underground. We've got enough issues up here. And finally, at number 1, SCP-3179, a sentient liquid metal with shape-shifting and drone spawning capabilities, hell-bent on escape come hell or high water. Yeah, that's something we don't want out in the streets. Currently, 3179 is being held at a containment unit designed by the Cogwork Orthodoxy over 100 years ago, but it doesn't look like this will hold up much longer. Once it breaks, who knows how long we'll contain this thing. 3179 spends most of its time attempting to break containment. It will expand and change shape and even create autonomous anomalous entities to assist in its quest. While the main body of metal usually looks like metal, the pieces it breaks off can actually take all sorts of forms. In fact, through what appears to be trial and error, 3179 has successfully created automatons that perfectly imitate mobile task force members and use them to infiltrate the Foundation. Many times, MTF personnel have been found tampering with the containment unit for no apparent reason, only to be discovered as pieces of the metallic blob. During its many escape endeavors, it has killed, maimed, and otherwise generally trampled all over the people nearby. Attempting to grow legs on its underside, forming propellers on its top side, imitating voices of Foundation personnel to lure folks away, it's done it all. Followers of Mekane the Broken God consider this thing to be the offspring of their deity and attempted to prove this. This seems to have inspired 3179 to believe that it's a god, or at least taught it that people will worship it if it acts as one. So now 3179 creates tablets equating itself to Mekane and demands to be worshipped. Somehow I don't believe that this is the benevolent being the Church of the Broken God prays to. Kicking us off at number 5, we have SCP-3253, the Prison of Ink and Flesh. Sounds pretty wicked, right? I'd watch that movie, I'd read that book. This anomaly is a phenomenon that only manifests when one specific subject uses a handmade needle to tattoo images onto another specific subject's skin. It's very specific, very odd. The image tattooed must resemble an object, person, time, place, or phenomenon that the tattooee has come into contact with and can recall. Once the tattoo is finished, the object being represented by the tattoo will disappear and instead become of the subject's skin. Indeed, a fleshy, inky prison. This works for pretty much any physical thing, including humans. If you want that thing back, it is possible to bring it back into existence by destroying the image. However, whatever damage you do to the image will also happen to the object itself. If you laser remove it, the object will end up being badly burned. If you scratch it out completely, it'll have those same scratches when returning to the world. So if you were thinking you could use this guy's skin for storage, you better reconsider that if you want your object back in the same condition that you started in. Properties of this anomaly were discovered when both subjects were being held as D-class. The tattooee is an ex-yakuza who collects tattoos of people he's killed. He believes that if he can get it out of his head and onto his skin, he can forget it, which in a way is doubly true thanks to the anomalous properties. After being a test subject for a redacted SCP, he had an image representing it tattooed onto his skin. This resulted in the SCP disappearing from containment, causing a whole lot of confusion. The tattoo artist is a man implicated in a series of murders, spending his time in D-class confinement giving other subjects tattoos. For whatever reason, the effects will only manifest if these two men are the only ones involved and are using a certain handmade tattoo needle. However, the tattoo artist is currently in a self-induced coma, likely due to the stress induced through testing 3253. Nobody's sure as to when he may recover, so in the meantime this is a relatively safe SCP. But imagine what could be done with this power if they were both outside containment and fully aware of the possibilities. They get a lot done. Coming in at number 4, SCP-3646. As if regular mosquitoes weren't bad enough, now we've got phantom mosquitoes. Thankfully, these nasty nits are easy to tell apart from the generic ones. Pale white coloration and an odd feathery appendage extruding from the abdomen will tell you whether or not you're dealing with ghostly bloodsuckers. Instances of 3646 do not show signs of aging, have an unknown lifespan, and are sexless. They reproduce via anomalous means, as large amounts of new instances will appear on or near a corpse killed by other 3646s. All this is anomalous, yes, but the real weirdness begins after one dies. After brain functions cease, the next organism to come into contact with the corpse will display a progression of anomalous symptoms. There are 6 stages in all, getting progressively worse over the course of days. Stage 1 has the subject begin experiencing mild auditory hallucinations, like the sound of a mosquito flying past their ears, you know, that high-pitched whining. Stage 2 sees these hallucinations double in frequency, often causing what seems like simultaneous noises. The subject will also develop seemingly permanent goosebumps and try to cover exposed skin as much as possible. The next stage begins producing tactile hallucinations on the subject's limbs and neck, causing extreme agitation. These physical sensations can be stopped by swatting at their locations. Then the hallucinations become constant, leading to sleep deprivation and panic, as well as intense itching all over. By stage 5, welts similar to regular mosquito bites will develop all over their body, and subjects report that the buzzing has intensified into something that can be described as screaming. Then, in the final stage, all the blood in their body will start to dematerialize, leading to complete exsanguination and death. If anyone can think of a worse way to go, please let me know. Invisible, unkillable mosquitoes draining every last drop. I'm imagining a deflation scenario like the one from the Spookies, or maybe Wax Mask. Either way, good lord. Coming in at number 3, SCP-4308. The classical magical guitar trope. It's every high schooler's dream. I'm gonna write some songs and express my innermost feelings, and finally everyone's gonna understand me. In fact, they better do more than understand me. They need to experience the exact thing that I'm experiencing. Cue maniacal teen laughter. 4308 is a black Steinberger scepter that exhibits anomalous properties when played. Anyone subject to the music produced by it will enter an illusory state, representing the tune of the song in terms of motion. So if the song is happy, they'll experience an elating illusion, and if it's sad, they'll be exposed to some downer dreams. Either way, the illusory state will cease when the sound has stopped being produced. The player, however, is unaffected by this, otherwise it might end in some sort of infinite loop of emotions, just like life. Too much? The guitar was found in the possession of Duke, a moody, melancholy guitarist who seems to want to impose his high school tear sadness and anger on everyone around. He was reported to make songs like Lonesome, which made people in the crowd disappear into shadows and think lonely thoughts. Overshadowed, which made people think about childhood friends that were treated better than them. Horrible Pain, which seemed to bring up images of screaming, gunshots, knife wounds, and corpses. And Heartbroken, which literally had a person envision the removal and shattering of their own heart. Subtle songwriting. This guy will go far. It should be safe in the Foundation's security locker, but if a major moody star got their hands on this, we'd be in for one hell of an emotional roller coaster. Coming in number 2, we've got SCP-4106, the tragic tale of the lovebird. Aw man. 4106 is a particularly strong and smart bird who only likes one researcher. Anyone else will get bit, resulting in the manifestation of 4106-1, another lovebird. This bird will bite and hurt 4106, and then they will cuddle for about an hour before it flies away. Sounds like some of my old flames. I'm kidding! Maybe. When 4106 flies away, it cannot be stopped as it seems to be able to fly straight through solid objects. While hard to contain, this doesn't seem too dangerous, right? Essentially being lovebirds. Well, the major focus of the story might be on 4106 itself, but it presents plenty of ideas about the functioning of the Foundation that have wider reaching implications. In fact, this entry is a story of the loss of funding leading to the downfall of security protocol. Originally, 4106 was classified as safe. It was kept in a cage with electromagnetic locks and taken care of appropriately. There is zero chance of escape or of manifesting 4106-1. However, as government funding and other resources decreased, it became harder to contain 4106. Eventually, it was was upgraded to Euclid and then Keter. The electromagnetic locks were replaced with padlocks. Staffing on site was reduced. Soon it was moved to a small remote shack with little to no actual security. If the Foundation was having so much trouble containing a slightly above average lovebird, imagine what was happening elsewhere with more dangerous and volatile entities. Not ideal, as you might be able to imagine. If Mr. Seeds over here can just fly right out, I'd rather not be anywhere near any of the other sites. If we're to follow through on this canon, we'd also find out that the Global Occult Organization was given free reign by governments to destroy entities wherever appropriate. And knowing the GOC, wherever appropriate means at the drop of a hat. That's a dark, dark universe we're looking in. All because of a little bird. And finally at number 1, SCP-4798. Oh, so you're into poetry. Name 5 poets. Recite a stanza. Tell me about transgenic poetry. Oh, you can't? Fake poetry fan over here doesn't even know about the anomalous process of using written words to synthesize nucleotides and DNA. Okay, I'm never doing that bit again, I'm sorry. SCP-4798 is a population of anomalous organisms, mostly flora, that exist as a product of transgenic poetry. It can spread to other biological organisms as it is pseudomimetic in nature. This often leads to mutations in said organisms, which results in anomalous properties manifesting. This is especially obvious in humans as they tend to demonstrate a heightened understanding of the meaning and semantic nature of 4798. And of course, you should always be wary of someone who suddenly claims to understand poetry. The anomalous properties are varied across different subjects, ranging from relatively harmless to extremely dangerous. Harmless instances can be stuff like creating specific weather patterns to draw lines in the sand, or only being capable of existing while standing on paper. Dangerous ones can be expressed by causing seizures in nearby organisms and writing poems in the flesh of folks. Whatever's causing all this wants to express itself through poetry. Violent transgenic poetry. Kicking us off at number 5, we have SCP-1770. Ever tried to realign your bike chain after it came loose? It's not a lot of fun, right? And those things can cause some serious damage if you're not careful. I'm talking bloody, greasy fingers. Well, this SCP is an entire animate mass of steel chains. Usually it takes the form of a human, and in fact it has human-level intelligence with speech and movement capabilities. If left on its own though, it will not move, nor will it initiate conversation. It is capable of attacking people and turning them into sculptures similar to itself. At one point in the past, it would establish hideouts in major population zones and covertly pull folks into its grasp. Nowadays, it just hangs out. If it were to attack someone, the process would involve 4 steps. 1. It would choke the victim to death using chains removed from its body. 2. It inserts chains into the victim via the skin, eyes, nose, and mouth. 3. It begins to replace the victim's flesh with new chains and shape them into a new form. Usually the form is humanoid, but on rare occasions they will form complex series of knots instead. And 4. All the victim's flesh is now chains. Yikes. Just imagine that, a bunch of chains sliding into your nostrils through your sinuses. Actually no, don't imagine that, I'm sorry for putting that image out there. Don't worry too much though, like I said before, this thing doesn't seem to want to pervert the human form anymore. Apparently it used to see the transformations as an artistic outlet, but no longer has the drive to do it. If you show 1770 a piece of art that doesn't showcase humans, it will interact with you. If you show it one with humans, it will enter a depressive, apathetic state and lie down in the corner for a few days. A tortured artist who creates tortuous art. Number 4. SCP-983. This one touches on 2 common fears, growing old and singing along to your own birthday song. Yes, we've all been there. What the hell do you do when everyone's singing happy birthday to you? Smile and nod? Lock eyes with someone? Moving on, 983 is a vintage mechanical monkey that looks like it's from sometime around the 1940s. It's dressed in a ringmaster's vest and holds a brass bell and a striking rod. Under most circumstances, this little primate is harmless, but if someone touches it during the 24-hour period coinciding with the day of their birth, the anomalous effects manifest. Once the birthday celebrator touches the monkey, it will do a backflip and sing a simple song. Ring-a-ding-ding-ding, it's your birthday. Hopefully I got the tune right. It will sing this little ditty every 3 or 4 seconds, pausing to ring the bell. Every time it sings the song, the newly matured individual will appear to age by 1 year. This will continue until the person sings along or dies. Yep, this little monkey will sing you to death. Good luck. It's not fully understand how the sing-along works or how to guarantee the desired result, but if you do manage to fulfill the requirements, the monkey will triumphantly declare, birthday and stop ringing and singing. Then a single gumdrop style candy will be produced from the bell. Depending on how you sang, the candy will be a different color. A perfect sing-along will produce a crystal clear candy with luminescent properties. A near perfect one will produce a clear one without the sheen. If you eat this candy, it will restore the years you had lost during the process, and if the shinier one is consumed, it may even restore some extra life. Forget fountains, we found the mechanical monkey of youth. If the person is unable to sing their part correctly, they will eventually die from age, and the monkey will produce a black candy. Do not eat the black candy. No, not even if you like licorice. Coming in at number 3, we have SCP-2690. I'm gonna do my best to explain this one, but it is quite odd. This is an unidentified object that initiates an LK class species transmutation event classified Seraphim 1390. Anyone who undergoes this event is to be classified as 2690-A. What exactly happens is up for debate, but it seems that folks who come in contact with it are transformed into something awful. Terrible beings that think that they're angels and that other people need to undergo that process as well. It's so beautiful, they say. We need more people to understand. 2690-A specimens have been left to their own devices to study 2690 itself. They've come up with their own containment procedures and description. It reads, "Touch it, read it, please adore it. We need so many more. We stay here where it was interned until it takes flight." Somehow that seems a little different than standard containment. Please come touch this thing, it's beautiful. Yeah, I'm gonna keep my distance. The report also describes the SCP. It could speak once, it needs us, or sorrow consumes it, but oh, how bright. Oh, wings unfurl over your face and your feet and your chest in light of it. Oh, such glorious luster. It illuminates flesh until it has had enough. But worry not. Love is inside of you. That is how we were meant to be. To learn that it was always in us is our greatest gift. To keep it to ourselves is sin. We can all fly if we try hard enough. Getting major cult vibes for sure, but hey, they think it's so great, why not give it a try? Filling out our number 2 slot, SCP-3994. Normal human people, like Mark Zuckerberg or Alex Jones. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if they turned out to be alien shell-covered goo. 3994 is a collective designation for a cluster of extraterrestrial entities. They develop and inhabit outer shells that look like humans and will mimic the appearance of a pre-existing individual if there's one nearby. If there isn't a human nearby, it will still form a shell based on approximate knowledge, which again could be the inception of Zuckerberg. Don't kill me. The shells are meant to act as disguises to hide the inner gooey form of 3994, but often fail to perform as intended. Plenty of these weirdos have deformities like twisted appendages and disproportionate skeletal structure. If a goop ever exists outside a shell, it lacks any form or structure and can sometimes be as tall as 560 centimeters. Over time, these normal human people have learned to copy speech patterns, dialects, and languages of those they were exposed to. At first, they weren't able to string together proper sentences, but now they are matching the language proficiency of Foundation personnel. It appears that they're able to communicate via telepathy with other instances, creating a sort of hive mind complex. This means that they can learn without being directly exposed to humans. For this reason, the Foundation has deemed it necessary to teach the things false information about humanity to make uncovering instances easier. This doesn't seem to be working so well though, as a recent containment breach has made it very clear that they are already seeing through the ruse. They aren't damageable by conventional means, often requiring the use of flames or acid to destroy them. And very soon, they could probably take over the top of the food chain. And finally at number 1, SCP-3456. Basically the 4 centaurs of the apocalypse, except there's more than 4 of them and the world hasn't ended yet. These SCPs resemble horses, sort of. Their size and form say horse, but the lack of hair, translucent skin, and human torsos fused to their backs say otherwise. Oh, and the human torsos have huge arm spans, sharpened digits instead of fingers, and a nose hole that emits screams at over 110 decibels. So we've got a decidedly weird creature on our hands. They materialize near war zones, terror attacks, and natural disasters, as if they are drawn to human suffering. Anyone who lays eyes on an instance of 3456 can expect to be stalked for the rest of their days, which is nice. The horrible horses forces will capture a great number of subjects before disappearing entirely. It's unknown what happens after. In addition to all these terrifying details, it should also be noted that some instances have been reported to be over 30 meters tall, and that they are impervious to conventional weapons. Ah, good. Well, no sense worrying over something we can't stop then. One little saving grace does exist though. They are unable to cross bodies of fresh water. Why this is the case, nobody really knows, but we can all be glad that there's one way to avoid them. Although, there's less fresh water than ever, so we'll see how long we can make that work. Starting us off at number 5, we've got SCP-008. A true classic in many different ways, 008 definitely has a license to kill. It's not employed by the Secret Intelligence Service though. No, 008 is essentially a zombie virus. This complex prion has 100% infectiousness and 100% lethality. So, if you come in contact with it, you're cooked. I'm sorry, enjoy zombiehood. You know, go eat some brains or something. It can be transmitted through exposed mucous membranes and bodily fluids, and miraculously is not airborne or waterborne. So it's pretty infectious, more or less flu-like, but it won't spread quite as quickly as wildfire. If you're worried that you might have been infected, take note of your symptoms. If they started more than 20 hours ago and haven't progressed to coma, you're probably fine. Maybe it's just the flu. However, if you start to notice any of these symptoms early on, I would start to worry. First, it causes flu-like symptoms with high fever, and eventually these will progress and cause severe dementia. Once the dementia progresses far enough, a comatose state will be induced. Cellular necrosis begins, leading to symptoms similar to gangrene. Then the red blood cells increase their oxygen storage capacity, which means slower blood flow and increased muscle strength and endurance. Metabolism flatlines, and infected folks can survive on years without nutrition. Then people start acting like zombies. Slow walking, shambling, groaning humanoids with a taste for human flesh. If the 008 infectee notices any sights, sounds, or smells associated with living humans, it'll make its way in that direction. In classic zombie style, the only way to cure the disease is with severe trauma to the head. Headshots only, no cures. Containment is basically quarantine and incineration. Brutal. However, SCP-500 has been shown to cure the disease, even at advanced stages, but, you know, there's only 50 some doses of 500 left, so we're not going to be using that on every zombie that comes across. Right now, researchers think that 008 did not form naturally on Earth. Alien zombie plague. I feel like I've seen that in the B-movie section. Coming in at number 4, SCP-1810. This freaky fellow is a tall French-speaking humanoid covered in charcoal gray cloth. Nobody's seen the face behind the drapery, although there are 2 large metal discs in place of its ears. While being extremely tall and preternaturally strong, 1810 has the mind of a child and prefers to be called Pierrot. How's my French? Oh boy. In the 70 years since containment, Pierrot has not physically changed or aged at all. Some theorize that he's immune to the effects of aging and will continue living until decommissioned. 1810 has no abnormal healing abilities though, and will heal at a similar rate to most humans. Its anomalous properties will manifest when within 500 meters of a child it deems lost. Pierrot will then fixate upon taking care of that child and provide for their wants and needs. However, there seems to be a massive disconnect between what the child actually needs and what it thinks the child needs. This could mean stealing, committing acts of violence, or locking the children up for their own protection. He can become even more unnaturally strong in situations like this. 1810 was initially discovered in Paris in the 1940s as he was kidnapping children and stealing objects. Upon containment, the Foundation planted a cover story of a carnival worker kidnapping children, which seems to have stuck. Even with Foundation custody, Pierrot will freak out when he thinks children need help. This often happens when he's shown media with children in prominent roles. One particularly dangerous incident occurred when he was shown a TV show dealing with issues like bullying and peer pressure. He smashed the TV and tore through the containment cell's door, screaming that he needed to protect the babies. Since then, the Foundation has been a little more careful in what they show. Upon interviewing one of the children protected by Pierrot, it was discovered that he had many children under his watchful eye, and that he was totally misguided in his attempts to take care of the children. Most days would be spent gallivanting in the tunnels, eating what could only be assumed was rats, and giving poorly made gifts. The girl recalls him providing her with a real unicorn, but it was always tired. What was really gifted was a mutilated horse with a fake horn. Oh boy. Post-containment, many emaciated corpses were found in locked rooms. Not the ideal caretaker. Coming in at number 3, we have SCP-772. Currently, this one slumbers in a complex network of icy tunnels. If it were to ever wake, we'd be in huge trouble. 772 was found in Greenland by a team of folks researching global warming. While exploring a glacier, a vast network of tunnels was discovered. The team found a chamber hosting a large, coiled serpentine body, and soon after this discovery, the folks present fell ill. The folks present felt ill symptoms of all varieties: swollen lymph nodes, necrosis of skin, and more. By nightfall, every last one of them was dead. Foundation agent caught wind of the story and began investigating. The SCP itself is a giant terrestrial serpent of unknown origin coiled through the series of tunnels. Some of the tunnels are marked with ancient Nordic script that predates the settlement of the island by Eric the Red at the turn of the 11th century. Nobody is sure how long it's been sleeping, but we're sure glad it is. A great deal of its body is embedded in the glacier, probably due to it shifting and changing over time. Even though it is hypothetically stuck, nobody wants to test the structural stability of this glacier. Keep it that way, please. In addition to its immense size, the snake has a particularly deadly defensive ability that I may or may not have alluded to earlier in the entry. The serpent's skin secretes a toxin that has yet to be identified and currently has no antidote. It also causes death in all manners of ways, and there's no consistent deadly effect. Toxin has also been found in less potent concentrations coming from the snake's breath. So yeah, it can also weaponize this deadly, unknowable poison. Great. Giant death-exuding snake. Who wants to make the trip to Greenland? Coming in at number 2, we've got SCP-3008. This is one of my personal favorites just because of how relatable it is. IKEAs freak me out a little bit. They're too gigantic, and every time I go in, the arrangement is all different. You know, where I thought would be scented candles, it's now full of pop art prints. The bedding area is full of shower curtains. Why can't I find a doormat? Where's the exit again? 3008 is a big abandoned IKEA. From the outside, it's totally normal. If you enter from anywhere but the front door, it'll just be an empty building. But if you walk through those front doors and out of sight, you are relocated to 3008-1, the infinite IKEA. I heard Kubrick was in pre-production on that. The inside of 3008-1 is a space resembling the inside of an IKEA, but like way bigger. No visible walls, no visual clues that might terminate at any point. Even laser rangefinders have brought up inconclusive results. The space could be infinite. An unknown amount of people are trapped within and have been since before the Foundation put containment into effect. The IKEA-ites have formed rudimentary civilizations and built fortifications and settlements to defend against 3008-2. This is where things get weird. These faceless, exaggerated IKEA employees walk around during the day as if they were perusing the show floor. However, whenever night falls, they become extremely aggressive, attacking folks and uttering the phrase, "The store is now closed. Please exit the building." I guess IKEA got serious about their security after all those vloggers stayed overnight. These oddball employees will lay siege to different settlements and have successfully brought many foundations down. Apparently they're attracted to pieces of other employees, so you better be pretty meticulous while cleaning up post-battle. There are exits to the outside world, but their locations are inconsistent. So far, only one human male has escaped during containment and was followed by an instance of SCP-3008-2. The faceless Noid killed the man and was subsequently gunned down by Foundation personnel. An IKEA notebook was found in the man's pocket with an account of his experience in the furniture store. His journal depicts a bleak existence, but one not totally devoid of hope. While surviving on Swedish meatballs and bottled water, he discovered that most people trapped in the IKEA were not from the same time, place, or even universe. My theory is that the IKEA opens up in all sorts of different dimensions, taking in a few people at a time. How else would hundreds of people go missing in an IKEA with no recourse? Coming in at number 1, we've got SCP-1730. What happened to Site-13? Seriously, I can only hope to give you the barest of bare bones explanations here. 1730 is an entire Foundation site from a different timeline or universe or dimension. There's no way to confirm any of that. At one point, it was full of anomalies, researchers, doctors, and the like. However, in whatever alternate universe this takes place in, the Foundation is a much less ethical organization. Less protection, more pain. Site-13 was meant to store humanoid entities, but humanoids and humans were not treated the same. Nope, if it was humanoid, it might as well be subhuman and treated like garbage. A doctor researching anomalous humanoids would dispose of the bodies with an incinerator, somehow turning them into weird, toxic gel. The gel caused all sorts of problems, including turning these still living anomalies into viscous abominations. Some of the anomalies that should have been disposed of by doctor's orders were spared, but then they were taken over by the goo. The goopy beasts then took over the site and pretty much made life hell for anyone present. Also, at some point, Site-13 contained God? Like, actual God? That's getting crazy. On top of all these insane things going on, there was also a machine built on site called the Thresher. This highly volatile piece of technology was capable of teleporting the whole site to other universes, but didn't always work. Because of this, Site-13 was full of anomalous topography, also known as hallways ending where they shouldn't, walls moving around, the floor disappearing sometimes, and more. The entry for 1730 includes a smorgasbord of exploration logs detailing the exploits of all sorts of MTFs sent in to investigate and rescue. A laundry list of lunacy is contained in these logs, with appearances from deadly leeches, writing on the wall mimetics, crystal butterflies, no-clip sludge that makes legs invisible, the Gate Guardian, SCP-1810, and as mentioned previously, literal Abrahamic God. Tau 5 Samsara makes an appearance as well, which always makes for a fun read. What really happened is sorta up for interpretation, but I am happy to say that Site-13 is currently not in our dimension, although it could make it back someday. Let's hope it doesn't. Number 5, we have SCP-913. If you've plumbed the depths of the SCP tales, you probably stumbled across the name Dr. Wondertainment before. This enigmatic, anomalous Willy Wonka of the underground seems to enjoy creating strange toys to bring joys to girls and boys. Usually these playthings have odd qualities that really aren't suitable for use by children, but we'll ignore that for now. Wondertainment created a whole line of Little Misters brand people a while ago, all human, all anonymous. There are 20 in total, including one discontinued Mr. Red and number 0, Mr. Collector himself. Some are considered safe and don't really pose any threat as anything other than a human, while others are a little more unpredictable. SCP-913, or Mr. Hungry, falls under the unpredictable descriptor. He's a middle-aged man with an extremely fast metabolism. So fast, in fact, that he requires the recommended daily caloric intake for a normal human his size once every 2 hours. If this caloric requirement is not met within the 120-minute time limit, Mr. Hungry will enter a trance state. While in this trance, he will break down and ingest any solid matter in sight. Literally everything, even stuff that would usually be indigestible like wood, plastic, and metal. To make matters worse, he will not distinguish between living subjects and other material. So yeah, he might just eat someone to calm his rumbling tummy. Mr. Hungry can rend objects with an estimated force of 3,000 newtons and has an estimated bite force of 5,000. For these reasons, the Foundation has elected to keep him in a reinforced steel cell, constantly being fed nutritive slurry through a catheter. If he got out and got hungry, there's no telling what he might eat. Coming in at number 4, SCP-909. Just to stay on the Dr. Wondertainment train of thought for a little while longer, we'll take a look at another one of the more dangerous little misters. 909 is Mr. Forgetful, who may or may not have been created to cover the good doctor's tracks in case of trouble. It's a young adult male who seems to be suffering from permanent anterograde amnesia. He's vaguely aware of his condition, but doesn't remember anything aside from memories that he's developed through the anomalous qualities that he has. If you were to interrupt Mr. Forgetful mid-sentence, he would likely just revert to a confused state, being unable to remember where he is, what he was doing, or how he got there. The anomalous properties stemming from this are quite interesting though, and have wide-reaching implications if he were to ever escape custody with an individual who's a little wrong-minded. Any experience that 909 describes through writing will immediately enter his long-term memory. However, this experience will also disappear from the memories of all other individuals involved. So hypothetically, he could hoard all sorts of information and keep it from everyone else who might have experienced what he's thinking about. Imagine if a malicious person had him erase memories of theft, murder, terrorism, or treason. The world could quickly go to shit and no one would even realize. Not the kind of power you want out and about in the world. Oh, and as a side note, just in case you were wondering, 909 is very allergic to peanuts. Keep an EpiPen close by if you're with him. Coming in at number 3, we have SCP-2009. This is a mutation-causing mushroom spore. It makes people into other people and then turns them into reproductive machines. Get your mind out of the gutter, not like that. So there are 2 different stages in the 2009 life cycle. There's 2009-01 and 2009-02. 01 is the designation for all instances of an anomalous male humanoid capable of asexual reproduction by means of spores. So it's a bunch of mushroom clones named Thomas Huang. Each instance is 100% genetically identical to the next, and each is fully sapient. None of the Thomases seem to know that they're anomalous, and they all share the same memories from childhood up until early adulthood, living in the community of Pollinsby, California. Although no such community or people like Thomas have ever been found to exist outside of this context. So the Thomases will walk around living their lives wherever they've spawned until they find conditions that are suitable for them to begin reproduction. When the temperature and humidity are just right, instances of 2009-01 will seek out a dark, high-up area with plenty of nearby foot traffic. Then they'll anchor themselves to nearby structures and begin producing 2009-02 spores until they die of exhaustion. Imagine stumbling across one of these humanoid mushroom men, absolutely hollowed out through their own efforts. Oof, just being a janitor sweeping along and you find a corpse, an empty corpse named Thomas. The spores then float off and infect humans who are unfortunate enough to breathe them in. Within 3 to 4 days, those infected will become nauseous, lethargic, and sensitive to light, and by the 8th day their physiology will have totally changed to match that of the other Thomases. The folks will notice along the way that their body is changing and become very distressed. I mean, you would too if you suddenly began to metamorphosize into a 20-something man named Thomas. Once the transformation is complete, it will 100% match 2009-01 and will exhibit no knowledge of their lives beforehand. Then they will live their newly Thomas life until it's time to make more spores. The Foundation has actually burned towns entirely to the ground for housing instances of 2009. It's just that infectious. Filling out our number 2 slot, SCP-457. Flame on. 457 appears to be a sentient being composed of flame, but its actual composition is unknown. It's shaped out by the flames that it produces and will often assume a humanoid form if given sufficient fuel. At its very smallest, 457 will appear to be a single tiny matchstick-sized flame, but as it grows, it gains the ability to assume some more complex shapes. Also, its intelligence grows with size and fuel sources. It can even communicate once it hits a certain size, either by scorching letters onto surfaces or by using a series of crackles and pops to speak. If 457 reaches a certain size, it will split into 2 beings, and if they grow large enough, they will split off as well, and so on and so forth. These instances are actually very aggressive towards each other and will try to consume or extinguish their doubles in order to keep available fuel for themselves. 457's goal seems to be just to acquire larger sources of fuel and to spread, which is simple enough considering it's fire. However, its intelligence and size grow, and with that it becomes more dangerous. It has been seen sabotaging sprinkler systems and setting up complex traps in attempts to escape. Multiple wildfires have been attributed to it, and you can be sure that if it were to find its way into a densely populated zone, there would be lots of bodies burning. Crispy. And finally at number 1 we have SCP-035. Imagine if the mask was even more dangerous, somehow. Okay, so 035 doesn't have cartoonish properties, but it is wildly deadly and destructive. This skip is a white porcelain comedy mask that will sometimes change to tragedy. If it changes, all existing visual records will automatically change to reflect its updated appearance. If you stay on its wiki page long enough, you'll notice the difference. Trust me. The mask is constantly leaking a corrosive and degenerative liquid from its eye and mouth holes. Spit and tears, this stuff is not. This liquid will decay anything and everything that comes in contact with it, and eventually the materials will melt completely into a pool of the original contaminant. Glass reacts the slowest, which is why the Foundation keeps it rotating between many airtight glass cases. Living organisms who come in contact with the goop will be melted down to nothing with no chance of recovery. This includes you, so do not touch it. Folks within a couple meters or in visual contact of the mask will experience a strong urge to put it on. This is a bad idea. Anyone who puts on the mask will experience brain death and then become possessed by the consciousness contained within. In fact, any humanoid shaped object at all with the mask will become possessed. This includes mannequins, corpses, and even statues. However, anything that the mask does possess will degenerate very quickly and eventually become mummified. Conversations with the 035 have actually been quite fruitful, and it has provided knowledge about other SCP objects and history in general. The consciousness claims to have been present during many historic events. It is intelligent, charismatic, and flattering to anyone who speaks with it. However, it is highly manipulative, and even being near the mask without putting it on can cause sudden and profound changes to someone's psychological state. It will often prompt folks to commit suicide while transforming others into mindless servants. This has led to plenty of escape attempts, resulting in the Foundation limiting all interactions with 035. Now, 035 will fill its containment cells with blackened, contaminated human blood and meddles with all sorts of containment measures, including damaging locks, preventing electronic devices from functioning, and degrading the walls. Obviously, it's not happy that it's been left alone in there. Let's hope that they can keep relocating it. Just over and over again. Starting us off at number 5, SCP-525. Name 5 things you would never want in your eye sockets. Needles, dirt, hydrochloric acid, hot coffee, anything that isn't your own personal eyeball. Okay, well, what about spiders? Eye spiders. Spiders. Oh boy. That's what SCP-525 is. It's a bunch of spider legs that want to come together and steal your eyes. So actually it's a collection of multiple disjointed arthropod legs around 10 to 15 centimeters in length. DNA tests have been inconclusive, but it seems like these spindly limbs are closest to those of a brown recluse. At the base of each leg are several minute hooks capable of perforating flesh. Ah, perforated flesh. It makes me think of the days where I thought everything sounded like a wicked band name. Well, actually that would be a good song name, but I digress. When these legs are left alone, they remain motionless. However, if 8 of them are brought within 0.6 meters of each other, they will bunch up into a group and attach themselves into a single entity. We'll call this one 525-1. Once a makeshift spider is formed, this 8-legged freak will crawl around and try to make contact with the closest human or similar. I say similar because they only respond to most large to moderate sized mammals, and even then not everything is attractive to them. Once it finds a suitable eyeball producer, the spider will crawl up to the sockets. It'll center itself over the eye and use 4 legs to secure the eyelid while the other 4 extract the eye. This is done with surgical precision, and 525 will take extreme care as to not damage the eye. Optic nerves are severed and the central retinal vein is sliced. It's all very meticulous. Once the eye is free, 525 will implant the base of each leg into the eye, and if allowed to remain, the spider will lay some eggs in the host's eye socket. Nightmarish. These will eventually sprout into new spider legs, which will then go hunting for more eyeballs. After about 3 weeks, the eye out in the world will dehydrate and the legs will leave to find another. Keep your safety goggles on and maybe consider investing in a space helmet, unless you want the ocular arachnids coming by and snatching your sight orbs. Coming in at number 4, we have SCP-4165. Is anyone in the audience a tortured artist? Like, do you get an idea and you make it and it doesn't turn out how you wanted it to, and then you feel bad and the failure torments you, and it looms like a dark inky shadow in your mind following you around as you attempt to live a normal life? I'm definitely not speaking from experience here, no way. I'm just trying to make a connection between you and the SCP we're about to discuss. SCP-4165 is a 28-year-old human male in pretty rough physical condition. Lots of minor health problems here, but all of that is non-anomalous. The real abnormality is the ink monster that manifests and chases him. We'll call this dark blobular humanoid. 4165-1 has the ability to change its shape, size, and physical state at will. It will typically manifest around 50 meters away from 4165 and move towards it, avoiding any existing obstacles. No interest will be shown in other individuals unless it's attacked or otherwise provoked. If this is the case, it will harden its extremities and use them as weapons or attempt to fill the assailant's mouth and nose with ink. Not nearly as tasty as squidding pasta, unfortunately. If 4165-1 is immobilized or significantly harmed, it will demanifest and then wait around 7 to 10 days before showing up again. A nice week off for our poor 4165. Coming back to the question I posed at the beginning of this entry, there is one instance of the ink monster getting close enough to kill 4165. It has never actually killed him though, and instead if it gets nice and close, it'll pull a notebook and black pen from a hole in its head. This will greatly distress 4165 and often cause a panic attack. If the book and pen are not accepted and used, the beast will savagely beat 4165. It's like writer's block manifesting and then kicking your ass. Like, oh, write the book, you idiot. Oh, who told you? You went out and told everyone that you were gonna do it, now they think you're a hack. Ugh. I don't know. It's existentially and creatively terrifying. Coming in at number 3, SCP-4064. Maybe some of you folks at home would want to meet one of these SCPs. Sometimes it takes a little confidence boost and then a heartbreak for you to get your life back on track. No judgment. 4064 is a hive mind capable of inhabiting 6 distinct bodies, each of which appear as a light-skinned human woman with a golden face mask. These instances are able to interact with their masks on a biological level, sharing neuron impulses with each other and often perceiving their surroundings simultaneously. Persuasion also becomes more effective while wearing the masks. The goal of the 6 individuals is to serve a deity known as Anatolia. They all claim to be the daughters of Anatolia who need to nourish their goddess through the collection of strong negative emotion. The gold mask-wearing sextet are known as the Sisters, one of the multiple subgroups of the daughters. Sisters collect anguish and go around forcing people to fall in love with them before breaking their hearts. The emotional ruin of the men they seduce is delicious food for their goddess. The Foundation was able to secure and contain 2 instances of the Sisters, and from various interviews, they were able to find out about two more subgroups, the matrons and the pipers. Matrons nourish Anatolia with torture and fear, while the pipers murder innocent people to collect pure mourning. The sorrow at the passing of a loved one is considered the highest quality food for the goddess. I'll take the breakup, thank you very much. I mean, maybe it'll inspire SCP-4165 to start writing again. Filling out a number 2 slot, SCP-2030. Be careful what you're binging out there, folks. If you don't check the titles closely, who knows what you'll end up watching. SCP-2030 is an anomalous phenomenon that manifests as a television series. The medium through which it manifests changes with the times. Right now, it most often appears on streaming services, while in the past it may have showed up as a DVD or a VHS. There's no reliable evidence of it manifesting before 1993, but there are 38 seasons of programming, which implies that it has been active to some degree since about 1976. The program's title typically appears as Laugh is Fun, but other variations have been observed like Laugh is Life and Laugh is Laugh. It will often mimic art from other TV series, often causing viewers to watch it by mistake, thinking they're about to watch something less inherently dangerous. Laugh is Fun is a hidden camera comedy series along the lines of Just for Laughs gags or Candid Camera. However, the goofs and gaffes being pulled are often strange, violent, and disturbing. Some examples of the pranks I'm talking about would be a husband is skinned alive and stuffed with squirrels and then left beside his wife in bed, or a Margaret Thatcher meat monster falls out of the cupboard and attacks a woman in her kitchen. Individuals subjected to these practical jokes will often react with panic or distress, but as soon as the host of the TV show appears, they become immediately calm. The host, or SCP-2030-1, appears invariably in a 3-piece suit with black and white wingtip shoes. Is always shot from the neck down, making identification difficult. Most participants will express familiarity with the host and often identify him by his known name, Laffy McLafferson. Laffy will always give an odd speech at the end of each episode, and it sums up what we saw in a way that would seem to be like aliens wrote it if they wanted to mimic human entertainment from the 70s. Not quite word salad level, but definitely in the uncanny valley of speech, if that's a thing. All participants on the show are real or recognizable humans, and every last one of them has died of causes unrelated to the show. There is nothing connecting their deaths to the show other than the footage of them on the show. Laugh is fun. Laugh is laugh. And at number 1, we have SCP-4205. What are your windows made of? Do you know the particular variety of glass? Maybe find out or just stop looking at them. Why? Because you might accidentally catch a glimpse of 4205. This is a visually perceived cognitohazardous anomaly presenting as two adjacent amber-hued luminous oculiform objects within a transparent medium, or in layman's terms, amber eyes appearing in glass. It has been observed in all sorts of glass, the only exception being lead glass. Any sentient being directly viewing 4205 will undergo immediate and irreversible brain death, with all measurable neurological activity ceasing within 500 milliseconds of exposure. It 100% instantly kills people that look at it. An outside observer would see the individual just drop dead. However, for the person dying, the half-second interval it would take to die would seem like it was taking forever. This is stretched out in their perception as the eyes seem to enjoy tormenting people. Yikes. All you did was look out the window and now you're experiencing unimaginable torture and regret. Bad deal. Should have kept your eyes on the screen. Viewing footage of the eyes is safe, but any digital footage will display some level of corruption. And the Foundation terminal that had been used during a viewing event was later found with severe textual and data corruption. The entry for this one is very interesting. It actually mimics the experience of using a 90s era Foundation terminal, so I would highly recommend checking this one out in its entirety. Poor Wade, so self-conscious, so self-critical, but hey, happens to the best of us. And at number 5, we have SCP-1249. Okay, so at first, this one isn't gonna seem too scary. It's a cute little fennec fox. Come on, it's adorable. But keep in mind that the Foundation keeps only one of these under lock and key and literally incinerates the rest. Yes, they take these tiny foot-long foxes and they throw them into the incinerator to prevent them from being spread across the world. Why would they do something so barbaric? Well, I'll tell you why. Because these things are dangerous and deadly. While appearing to be identical to a non-anomalous fennec fox, SCP-1249 is comprised entirely of fungal material. This mushroomy stuff has replicated the skin, skeleton, and fur of a fox, while its internal structure consists of a thick mold of varying viscosity. Ugh. It is constantly exhaling a toxin containing heavy amounts of psilocybin and muscimol. So if you take a liking to this fox and you decide to hang out around it, you'll be exposed to this aerosolized toxin. After 2 minutes of exposure, an exposed subject will enter a consistently increasing state of euphoria until removed from 1249's presence. After 5 minutes, they will become highly resistant to pain and begin to behave similarly to those under the influence of psychedelics. Yeah, this fuzzy little pal will get you high. Some of you might be down for that, but not for what happens next. If the fox sees a subject in this inebriated state, they will lie on or against the subject. Soon after this cuddling begins, 1249's skin will appear to melt and grow over the subject. It will then completely envelop its prey and shift it towards its abdomen. There is no known limit to what this tiny guy can envelop, and it is capable of processing over 190 metric tons of food in 1 week. The oddest thing is that the fox will only eat live prey in this matter. It will eat dead subjects and processed food just like a regular fox would. So if these adorable little rascals were allowed to roam free, they would weasel their way into the homes of cute animal lovers everywhere, take them on a wicked trip, and then eat them. Sounds like a girl I knew in university. Filling out our number 4 slot, we have SCP-1536. These odd little ovals have major implications if you really think about it. Usually they just crawl around on the ground using their 2 weird arthropod legs, but something very interesting happens if they're presented with a direct line of sight to a sufficiently complex moving object. 1536 will alter its composition and appearance to match that of the object, effectively transforming into whatever the target is. While in this active state, it will be identical in every measurable aspect, from DNA to skin markings to even memory and personality. It even has the same life requirements, whether that be food and water, oxygen, etc. If it can sustain itself, 1536 will remain in this transformed state indefinitely, acting just as whatever it copied would. Damage and wounds will be sustained as well, and if the object is killed, it will return to its inactive state. It can't copy something from an image or a recording and needs about 16 minutes to cool down after returning to an inactive state before it can mimic once again. Who knows what these things are thinking when dragging themselves around on the ground prior to transformation? Is there a reason they do this? Do they have some sort of evil agenda? Plus, once a human is copied, it essentially becomes self-sustaining to the same degree that the person it copied is, so it can probably find food and avoid danger. What would happen when 2 of these identical clones come face to face? What if an important public figure is copied and it becomes impossible to tell them apart? What if it copies another extremely volatile SCP? These are questions I definitely don't want the answers to. Keep it locked up, throw away the key. Now at number 3, we have SCP-2774. Do you remember the sloth from Zootopia? Could you live like that every day? Slow reaction times, no emotion, a lack of ability to make high-level decisions. I know I couldn't. But if you ever come in contact with the mimetic agent 2774-A, you're gonna end up that way. SCP-2774 is any medium that contains 2774-A, which is a mimetic image of an unknown humanoid entity wearing a sloth costume. Once you see this image, the effects will set in between 40 and 100 hours after exposure. Once fully realized, you'll lose all ability to use your cognitive functions or make higher level decisions, save for a period of about 150 seconds every 24 hours. So basically, you're walking around on autopilot with 0 input until you get this short 2.5 minute window. Sounds like hell if I'm gonna be perfectly honest. Subjects who have already been exposed would tell you that it is. During their 150 seconds of lucidity, they're often agitated and fearful, and it's common for sufferers to act irrationally and express dread at the permanence of their situation. More often than not, they will beg someone to kill them or act in ways that would expedite death. At this point, the Foundation has found that the most humane thing to do is terminate the victims. Might be the first truly humane thing the Foundation's ever done. If you're colorblind, count your lucky stars. The image only retains anomalous properties if it contains hues of red and green. And for whatever reason, it has not been found online yet, just in media like movies, TV, and magazines. Home videos too. So all you young folks out there need not worry, the memes on the internet are still safe. Or at least as safe as they were before you knew about this one. Coming in at number 2, SCP-3998. Now this one is a scarecrow made up of very burned human body parts, held together by wicker, nails, and wire. It seems that it originated sometime in the late 17th century, but it still remains very much intact. This burned barnyard accessory constantly exudes flammable liquid from its bones, consisting of human fat and ethanol. Every night between 11 PM and 4 AM, 3998 ignites and is engulfed in flame. Even though the flames are quite intense, it sustains no structural damage. If nobody's nearby, it's no big deal. But if somebody is nearby and meets a set of criteria, they will also spontaneously ignite. As they burn, large quantities of ethanol will appear and start to boil in their stomach, inducing vomiting and causing further external burns, nerve damage, and organ damage. Eventually their body fat will begin to melt, and if they're left to burn long enough, the melted fat-ethanol combo will cause the stomach to violently rupture, often splitting the victim in two. These flames cannot be extinguished until 3998 is also extinguished. So that's pretty violent, right? Burning to death while vomiting ethanol? Well, thankfully, if you're a nice person, it won't affect you. It appears that only people who have killed or physically abused a romantic partner are targeted by these effects. So honestly, this thing's doing us all a favor. Although, if it appeared in a city center, we might have an issue. It could burn the whole place to the ground. And finally, at number 1, SCP-2852. Now this one is really terrifying to me, even though I don't consider myself any of the denominations it targets. This SCP will show up to various Catholic and Anglican religious functions, and even though it has never been seen by any attendees before, it will be treated like an established member of the family. 2852 looks like a white, middle-aged male and is comprised of human cells. However, it has no identifiable organs and its eyes are set into the sockets without any nerve connections. They're just kind of rolling around in there. It also speaks in a word salad. It never makes any sense, but all who interact with it will perceive it as acting normally and speaking intelligently. They'll also always refer to it as Cousin Johnny. Okay. Different terrible things will happen when it appears at baptisms, weddings, or funerals, known as blue, white, and black events respectively. The Foundation has attempted to restrict their access to events in the past, but they'll just appear inside if they're barred from entry. Depending on the event, strange things will happen when this SCP appears. Sometimes a bridal party will remove all their teeth and feed them to newlyweds. Sometimes blood is vomited into an open casket along with cicada guts. And sometimes a child's skin will slip off as if they were molting. No matter what, all in attendance will be negatively affected in major ways, ranging from higher suicide rates to sterility to developing violent personality disorders. It's actually theorized that a great deal of D-class subjects have actually been involved in these events in the past, which is why they act the way they do. Oof, it just sends a shiver down my spine knowing that any event could be attended by one of these things, and there's really nothing that can be done about it. Plus, the eating of teeth really messes me up. Just imagine chewing on a tooth for a moment. No. Keep these people impersonators away. Yikes. All sorts of stuff you would rather the Foundation just incinerated like a fennec fox, right? But hey, that's the kind of world we live in. Starting us off at number 5, we've got SCP-439. Who here is a fan of the worst torture imaginable? I don't know about you folks, but being immobilized and subjected to immeasurable pain is not exactly my cup of tea. No judgment, you know, everyone's got something, but stick with me and I'll introduce you to an SCP that will make your skin crawl like never before. Actually, I don't know if your skin could crawl after this one's done with you. SCP-439 is a grayish earwig that loves to crawl into the mouths of sleeping humans, all the way down into their lungs. If encountered while awake, it presents no more of a threat than a normal earwig. However, once this thing climbs down a sleeping person's trachea, it will settle in and subject you to a world of hurt. The first few hours after waking, the host will complain of chest pains and shortness of breath, followed by abdominal cramping. This tightness in their chest will worsen and a fever will rise until the host is incapacitated. At this point, the host will develop a disorder that's usually genetic and promotes additional bone growth into people's muscle tissue. This happens very rapidly and is extremely painful, often with bone spurs protruding through the host's flesh. The host will then seek shelter in a dark, enclosed space like a heating duct or a cupboard. In the first 3 days, without treatment, the host will become completely withdrawn and immobile due to pain and difficulty breathing. This is the final stage of the transformation on the host's journey to becoming a bone hive. Let that phrase sit with you for a moment. Bone hive. Okay. The host then enters the fetal position and their skeletal structure shifts until they are roughly spherical in shape, while new protrusions anchor them into place. Now unrecognizable, they've been converted into a sort of cage to protect their internal organs and the bustling new earwig colony within. The earwigs will preserve little bits of the brain and digestive tract to ensure that these organs still function, and they actually use the host's intestines to process materials into a nutritive slurry for the colony. The queen will produce between 20 and 30,000 offsprings as workers, drones, and warriors, just crawling around inside your bony body. Eventually a new queen will emerge and the colony will burst forth from the hive in search of a new host. And when I say burst, I mean they'll actually tear their way out. All but the queen will die over the next little while, and then the host will eventually starve to death. Yes, the host is actually still alive while all of this is happening. Experimentation suggests that they're actually still semi-conscious during the process as well, which a fate worse than death, to say the least. Filling out our number 4 slot, we've got SCP-3199. Colloquially referred to as eggheads, these are big, weird, bald chickens that could very well end the world if left unchecked. These giant humanoid fowl clock in at around 3 meters tall and weigh almost 800 kilograms when fully grown. They're thick. Just look at their SCP picture. They can run at speeds averaging 25 kilometers per hour, and upon contact with a human or animal subject, they will liquefy the internal organs and bone structure. This disgusting cadaver will then be brought and fed to the younger eggheads. Their reproductive cycle is what causes them to be so fearful, as there doesn't seem to be a limit to how many times these things can reproduce. They seem to do this asexually as well, meaning that they can just go on and on without, any other contact. So get this, any instance of 3199, fully grown or not, has an egg in them at all times. They will produce them often through a process in which the egg passes through the stomach, up the esophagus, and then it is vomited out of the mouth along with a viscous red corrosive substance. While this is happening, the chicken folk show extreme discomfort and emit sounds not dissimilar to screams. These large, rubbery off-white eggs are extremely resilient and have proven to be resistant to blunt force trauma, pressure in excess of 180,000 pounds per square inch, high precision blades, and long-term acid exposure. While it's easy enough to dispatch an egg head, the eggs themselves are hard to destroy. And the fact that they can reproduce at extreme rates means that this could easily represent an XK class scenario via overpopulation. Imagine living in a world where everywhere you look you see awful flabby chicken manticores vomiting eggs and acid. Although I wonder if the chickens fry up nice. That could be useful. Coming in at number 3, we have SCP-4616. This one's kind of an odd one, even for an SCP. It's a humanoid entity with superhuman strength and speed, and it actively avoids and destroys any and all surveillance equipment, meaning that nobody has actually acquired any high-resolution images or video of it. Hangs around farmhouses with properties that include wooded areas. It'll chill out at the edge of the woods during the day and wave with its right hand at anyone present, but it'll retreat into the woods if approached. At night, it leaves the woods to inspect the farm. During these expeditions, 4616 will actually do useful farm work. It'll rearrange objects and sometimes damage property and livestock. It will also bang and scrape on the farmhouse trying to gain entry. Any farmhouse resident who's outdoors during the nocturnal excursion will be abducted by the beast. Never taking more than one person during any given night, it will then drag their victim into the woods. Anyone who attempts to leave the property will be abducted as well. In fact, if anyone other than the farm's residents attempt to enter the property, they'll be beaten to a literal pulp. Yes, reports have shown that victims of an attack end up as a semi-fluid pulp. Those are the words that are in the report. Imagine the noises that might make. Just if the farmhouse that it's monitoring becomes empty or otherwise defunct, it will move on to the nearest wooded farmland and begin again. For the longest time, abductees were never recovered from the woods once abducted. However, more recently a ring of 37 oak saplings appeared on the lawn of a Foundation-monitored farmhouse. At the base of each tree was what appeared to be a freshly dug grave, and inside was a well-preserved human body. Acorns had been implanted in the victims while they were still alive, and the tree was allowed to grow within them, developing a complex network of roots deep into their bodies. It's unclear as to how long the victims were alive with the trees growing within them. For now, the Foundation is staffing the current farmhouse with D-class personnel with agriculture experience, cycling new members in via hidden tunnel. They're expected to return to the farmhouse by sunset and remain indoors until sunrise. They've noticed that 4616 has become a little more aggressive though. Coming in at number 2, we've got SCP-1155. More cursed graffiti, called us street sweepers. 1155 manifests as a work of street art depicting the form of a humanoid owl creature. It has sinewy forelimbs, claw-like hands, and often tends towards a predatory stance with eyes that seem to follow the viewer, kinda like any given portrait in a haunted house. Anyone who sees this image is compelled to investigate more closely, and if they approach within 2 meters, they will be subjected to a violent attack. This attack generally takes around 6 seconds and involves lacerations, dismemberment of extremities, whole or partial removal of soft body parts, and penetrating head trauma consistent with those inflicted by a large beak or talons. These attacks will not occur if the victim remains in sight of another person, and if the sightline is re-established while the attack is underway, it will halt. This is not recommended though, because the victim will die regardless, whether through shock or blood loss. If the attack is allowed to conclude, both victim and painting will vanish. There is yet to be an instance of victim retrieval, but the painting itself will reappear somewhere within 7 days. Whenever discovered, the area surrounding the painting must be quarantined, as completely enclosing it causes the relocation process to happen quickly. If you attempt to destroy or paint over it, it will also relocate. The Foundation constantly observes 1155 from a remote location while doing their best to keep civilians away from danger. Has anyone seen Velvet Buzzsaw? And finally at number 1, we've got SCP-4666. For this last one, let's get into the Christmas spirit, hey folks? 4666 is a long-lived humanoid of unknown origin. It's over 2 meters tall and appears to be an extremely emaciated, naked man of European descent. Capable of instantaneous or near instantaneous teleportation to any location north of 40 degrees north latitude. The Foundation has no idea how to properly contain this one. Every year this SCP will become active for a period of 12 days between December 21st and January 2nd. This is known as a Weissnacht event. 4666 will appear at dwellings in 1 or more locations, always at family homes and isolated rural areas. The family must have at least 1 child under the age of 8, and that area must have snow cover that lasts the duration of the event. For the first 7 nights, children will report seeing it somewhere near the family dwelling, whether watching from across a field or at the edge of a nearby forest. They will also report waking up and seeing it watching them sleep through the window. Nights 8 through 11 will involve family members hearing footsteps coming from the roof or attic and an unpleasant odor permeating throughout the house. No cause will be found, making the parents suspect that they are being stalked or haunted. On the 12th day of Christmas, 466 gave to me 2 scenarios. The more common scenario involves all family members being killed, save for 1 young child who is then kidnapped. It will inflict incapacitating injuries to the family members while they sleep and then herd them into a single room where it kills them all ritualistically in front of each other. The kidnapped children are brought to an unknown location and forced to make toys. If they don't work hard enough, 4666 will kill them or hurt them very badly. The remains are then used to make more toys. Yikes. The less common 12th day involves the family remaining unharmed and the children receiving gifts in the form of toys crafted from these remains of human children. Bad Santa, my ass. This thing gives Krampus a run for its money. Joy to the world and all that jazz. Coming in at number 5, we have SCP-659. If you saw Finding Nemo while still a child, you know very well how terrifying waterfowl with a group mentality can be. I get flashbacks every time someone says mine. But those gulls have nothing on the horrifying herons I'm about to introduce to you. SCP-659 is a species of birds resembling herons that display modular intelligence. I'll get to what that means in a second. There's only 1 flock known to the Foundation, and they seem to be native to North America, although there have been unconfirmed sightings in Europe. These birds can subsist on any meat they can find, but will stick to fish if it's available. When an individual specimen is isolated from the flock, it acts just like any other heron would. It's more intelligent than your average feathered friend, however, as it can solve simple problems, use tools, and learn very quickly. Now, to bring us back to modular intelligence, when more than one of these birds comes near each other, they gain combined intelligence. The more birds there are together, the smarter they become. It seems that there's an approximately 25-meter limit to this particular talent though. They don't have a hive mind, nor do they display telepathic abilities, but flocks are extremely well coordinated in their actions. If enough birds gather, they display human-like intelligence and sapience, and can actually learn at a faster rate than most humans. Some birds have even been documented learning French and English. They have used these smarts to break out of Foundation containment on multiple occasions. Upon being brought back in, Foundation researchers found that keeping each heron isolated at the distance exceeding 25 meters prevents them from gaining enough intelligence to escape. And all this seems pretty cool, right? Like, those are some pretty neat birds. Well, SCP-659 and all of its instances are vigorously hostile towards humans, and it's probably our fault. Before the first recorded containment, flocks in the wild did not display any sort of aggression towards humans. However, as detailed in Incident 659A, these birds are none too happy about being contained. Following a containment breach that resulted in the death of all on-site personnel save a few, the murderous birds were interviewed by a researcher. They had pecked holes in the tires of all vehicles, cut phone lines, and actually actually sent a flying sentry up to keep watch over the facility. When asked why they did this, one heron stepped up to the glass and wrote messages in blood from another heron in containment at the time. The messages were, "Don't act like don't know. You started this," and "freedom." No one tell Tippy Hedren. Coming in at number 4, we've got SCP-772. If the bugs from last time didn't get your skin crawling, this one sure will. 772 is a gigantic species of wasp, possibly dating back to prehistoric times. Dino wasps, if you will. A mature adult is typically 60 centimeters and can actually reach up to 70 when the antenna and ovipositor are included. They have extremely tough exoskeletons that are actually resistant to gunfire. This wasp has been shot and survived. Something tells me a raid might not work either. These humongous insects will fly around and deposit their eggs in large mammals, leaving the larvae to hatch and eat their way out. Using their sharp and maneuverable egg tube, they can lay between 5 and 20 eggs, all around 6 centimeters in length and 2.5 centimeters in width, before leaving the incisions to heal. So they can also use their pointy end as a weapon and stab their victims repeatedly, sometimes even resulting in bone penetration. I usually prefer my bones unpenetrated, thank you very much. The eggs will then incubate for 4 to 12 days, and as they grow nearer to hatching, the stress levels in the host will go up. You know, the kind of stress that happens when baby wasps are about to hatch under your skin and eat their way out. If you go and see a doctor, it's likely that they will mistake the bugs as abscesses or tumors. And what's extra fun about this bit is that as they burrow deeper into you, it'll seem like the lumps are just going away on their own. Nothing to worry about here, just becoming a host body for half-meter yellow jackets. The etymologist that discovered 772 actually cut himself open when he realized what would happen. They remain carnivorous even after their pupal state and can sometimes become cannibalistic in resource-deficient environments. Thankfully, all reported instances of this SCP are under Foundation control now, hermetically sealed in a chamber with a maximum capacity of 15 wasps to keep them from getting unruly. They've been known to break out of enclosures before. Hopefully, the incineration failsafe stays operational. Kill it with fire, always a good option. Coming in at number 3, we've got SCP-274. If Banksy and an SCP had a baby, this would be it. A can of spray paint with many variable colors. This SCP has the consistency of normal paint. Grossly enough, it has been discovered that the composition is actually 28% hemoglobin, 12% gastric acid, and then 60% regular paint. Once sprayed all over a wall, it will spread until it covers the entire wall and any walls attached. This usually takes the form of large and disturbing designs. Any building taken over by it will be converted into an organism that functions similarly to the species of the Anthozoa class. Common examples of this would be anemones, stony corals, and soft corals. Buildings infected by SCP-274 are predatory and will lure victims in by emitting alarming noises. Broken glass, loud coughing, painful whines, and whimpers will be heard by all passersby. Once a human enters, these noises will stop immediately. Victims are then suctioned into the building's newly formed gastrovascular cavity and often grabbed by entities known as SCP-274-2. These are humanoid figures wearing gas masks that can flatten out and take the form of graffiti. Our gas mask wearing assailants will spray victims in the eyes and mouth with SCP-274, which has a blinding and numbing effect. It's assumed that victims are then assimilated into other instances of SCP-274-2. If there are too many of these particular humanoids in any given building, one will have to leave and then go and spray a new one. If left unchecked, it is estimated that they could take over a large city in less than a month. Currently, Foundation Task Force Pi 1, aka City Slickers, is watching all known instances preventing folks from entering, and they're also burning down the infected buildings. Coming in at number 2, we have SCP-2675. Russia. This SCP is a Soviet-made Arctica-class nuclear-powered icebreaker ship named Sibir. Official records say it was retired, but later it was found out that it disappeared while investigating an anomalous artifact in the Arctic Ocean. It can spontaneously change shape, add new structures, equipment, and weaponry. It also generates neutron radiation. The water around it is often seen glowing blue. This shape-shifting ship can also vanish from one location and manifest elsewhere. The limits and nature of this power are currently unknown, although the use of it often coincides with a spike in radiation. Unfortunately, this kick-ass ship is hostile and dangerous. Come on, can't we just have some cool stuff? On board is a discrete entity known as SCP-2675-1. It appears to be an adult human male fluent in Russian, French, and English. Intelligent and violent, he claims to be a herald of a previously undocumented god. In a transmission from the ship, 2675-1 announces that he sails for the God-Child, born of the atom. He and his crew are no longer life, but time and energy. Based on information from other transmissions and reports, we have a vague idea of how he and the ship came to be. At some point while investigating the anomaly in the Arctic Ocean, something must have happened in the nuclear power source aboard the Sibir. This vaporized everyone on board, but eventually they rematerialized in this kind of host entity. Think like a Dr. Manhattan at sea. Those who were and reconstructed now see nuclear power as a god-child who needs to be cradled and cared for, whose love needs to be shared with all men. So this seafaring blue ghoul wants everyone to be broken down into atoms so they can finally see the warmth and love of the atomic god-child. Love it. And finally, number 1, SCP-2521. This one is absolutely fascinating, and if you haven't heard of it already, I would highly recommend checking out the original report on the SCP Wiki. Unfortunately, I am dooming myself and all of you by speaking about it aloud. Knowledge is power, but the way that this one works means we're all screwed. Sorry. Stop listening now if you enjoy living and breathing with a grand total of 0 tentacles pulling you into an unknown zone. Okay, SCP-2521 is a humanoid entity over 2 meters in height with sticky tendrils at the end of each arm. It appears to be black or dark gray with an odd little pentagon-shaped head. It can pass through solid objects, and as such is very difficult to contain. It absolutely loves collecting information about itself, and really likes when people discuss it out loud. Any instance of written or spoken information about SCP-2521 can be sensed by it, and will promptly be collected. Yes, this includes people who know and speak about it. Where does it take this information? Nobody knows. Personally, I like the idea that it takes all of this information to some unnamed location and protects it, kind of like a dragon hoarding gold. Thankfully for the Foundation, SCP-2521 doesn't seem to understand anything done up in symbols or pictographs. Pictures, videos, signs, and graphics are all fair game too. So considering now that I've been speaking very candidly about our tentacled friend, I should probably get going. Stick to symbols, folks.